What's up, everyone? Thralls of Metal back again. I am Shredlord, and I am excited to bring you a little bit of a new segment that we've been brainstorming for a little bit here. So, while discussing metal with my fellow cohorts, we ended up on the topic of Megadeth, and then we ended up on the topic about how many great lead guitarists came and went in the band Megadeth. And that got us to thinking, we rank a lot of shit anyway. Let's rank some bands that had members going through it constantly, and the first place to start was obviously Megadeth, being as that's the band that kind of started that conversation. Now, if you know anything about Megadeth, you know that Dave Mustaine has always been the constant with a cast of rotating amazing guitar players all throughout his history, including even a brand new guitar player that we just got introduced to last year. So the way I went about it is this. Everything, of course, is my own personal opinion, but what I have done here is I've gone through and created a list out of all the main Megadeth lead guitar players. And what I mean by that is, have they been on an album? So there are certain guitar players that were there for short stints, even Kerry King way back in the day, but if they weren't on an album, I didn't really consider them. And that also goes with the brand new guitar player, Timu. I refuse to try and say his last name because I will fucking butcher it. But I left him out of this list too, just because he's so new to the band. I haven't really heard anything original that's his. I've only heard him play the solos of the other guys that have come before him. So I kind of left him off this list. Maybe I'll do an updated one down the future when we have a little bit of material that he's actually on, so that way I can base this. So with that being said, basically the main guitar players that we are going to be going through today are going to be Chris Poland, Marty Friedman, Jeff Young, Glenn Drover, Chris Broadick, Al Petrelli, and Kiko Loro. So, without further ado, we're going to start chronologically here. The first guitar player that graced Megadeth's ranks was an absolute monster. His name, Chris Poland. Now, what makes Chris Poland special to me and what made him a home run in Megadeth was he was not your typical shredder. He didn't have that blues rock background that a lot of other guys who are into thrash metal and stuff had. He came more from jazz and fusion. So he was a very well-educated player, a very technically great player, and he brought a lot of melody and cool phrasing into that thrash metal format. So the albums Chris Poland was on: 1985's Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, 1986's Peace Sells But Who's Buying, and 2004's The System Has Failed, which was, he came back for a one-off after Dave Mustaine came back from a weird arm injury. I don't know if any of you guys remember, but way back in the day, Dave Mustaine had some kind of a nerve damage or nerve something going on with his right hand, and it was thought that he might not be able to play guitar again. However, through a lot of rehabbing and all this stuff, he was able to actually come back, and the album The System Has Failed was the first return, and to do so, he got Chris Poland back. Great album, we'll talk about it. Like I briefly touched on, what makes Chris a great player is his high musical vocabulary and the fact that he comes from a little bit of a different background, being that jazz fusion background. It added a little bit of different element to thrash, especially at that time. So even though Chris Poland was only in the band for 3 years, his presence and his prowess is definitely felt, I think, even to this day, because Megadeth fans still have plenty of those first two albums on their greatest hits, without a doubt. Leads like Rattlehead, Good Morning Black Friday, Wake Up Dead, those are just fucking amazing. And what makes them great is he's a very fast, fluid, shreddy guy, but he's also very melodic as well. So even though he's going through all these crazy runs and everything, you always have this great sense of feel and melody in it. And really, those first two albums really solidified Megadeth as a true force, which would set them up to keep rising and rising and rising. So overall, I think Chris Poland is my number 2. I think he is incredibly important to the development of Megadeth, and I think it was so important for Dave Mustaine to have a home run hit, so to speak, with the musicians in his band. And with Gar and Chris Poland, he absolutely did that and was able to make some killer albums to set the foundation for Megadeth's career. So, after Chris Poland exits the band, Dave Mustaine will dabble with a couple auditions, but end up selecting a guy named Jeff Young. Now, Jeff Young was in the band from 1987 to 1989 and was on the 1988 album So Far, So Good, So What, with the classic track In My Darkest Hour, which was, of course, written about Cliff Burton and the passing of Cliff Burton. Jeff Young, what kind of a guitar player is he? He was a very hot young shredder, I think, on the scene at the time, and Dave Mustaine took note of it. I believe the story goes that Mustaine had selected a gentleman to replace Chris Poland full-time. That gentleman, I don't remember his name, asked Jeff Young to break down the riffs and break down the solos for him so that way he could transcribe them, the new guy could learn. However, Dave Mustaine saw Jeff Young basically breaking down these Chris Poland solos and things very quickly and rapidly to the point where Dave Mustaine said, you know what, dude, fuck this other guy. I want you to do it. So that's how Jeff Young kind of came into play. Now, Jeff Young's stint in Megadeth was pretty short due to some kind of a personal misunderstanding where Mustaine accused him of trying to sleep or seduce his fiancée at the time. Jeff Young still denies it to this day. For all we know, it could have been some kind of a drug-induced rage by Dave. Who knows? But Jeff Young was a very hot, not in the physical sense, although he is a dapper-looking gentleman, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, he had a lot of the speed and a lot of that fluid shredding that Chris Poland had. So I think that Dave Mustaine basically said, hey man, if you're able to pick this kind of stuff apart so quickly, you need to be my guy. It is a shame though, because he was only on this one album and then was booted out due to a personal reason. So who knows how his story could have ended? Who knows? Maybe he could have been the next guitarist for Megadeth for the next 15, 20 years, and guys like Marty Friedman and Chris Broadick and Glenn Drover and Kiko aren't around. Who knows? But that's not how the story was written. I think the best solos that he had on that album, So Far, So Good, So What, Set the World on Fire, killer solo. A lot of fluid shredding, a lot of great stuff, exciting. Same with Hook and Mouth. The song Liar is a great solo. And even the quick snippet of a solo in My Darkest Hour, that build up towards the end. He had all the chops. And he had some good melody too. It's just, he was so short-lived and there was such a short serving of what he had to offer that I placed him 7th on this list. Some people might be offended, but honestly, when we go through the other guitar players and the way I explain them, I kind of hope that I can give a little bit of insight on why I chose other guys higher. So Jeff Young would be 7, a fantastic player. Didn't really end up doing much after Megadeth. He released a bunch of solo albums. He plays in like a thrash metal cover band again with Dave Ellison, the Kings of Thrash. But all in all, a great player. And now we're going to talk about my absolute favorite era of Megadeth, and I'm sure it is an absolute favorite era of a lot of Megadeth fans. That would be the Marty Friedman era, because in 1990, Marty Friedman is added to the band, and in my opinion, takes Megadeth from a super solid thrash band to an elite thrash band. And honestly, one of the reasons I believe that is the, I don't want to say inspiration, but steel sharpens steel. And what I mean by that is Marty Friedman as a player is just as technical as anybody on this list. And if you don't believe me, you can go back and listen to the early Cacophony albums that he did with Jason Becker, where it was just a shred fest extravaganza of him and Jason Becker just busting out melodic shred lead after melodic shred lead, dual guitar leads. Marty Friedman can play. He can play anything. But what makes Marty Friedman so special to me is how unique he is. And I think that unique voice that he had, along with the skills of creating unique melodies and really interesting phrases that nobody else was coming up with, really inspired Dave Mustaine. And I really think Marty Friedman's influence as a musician helped make Dave a better musician, to where, sure, some of the grit and the heaviness rolled off a little bit from some of the earlier albums, but the melody and the technical precision just kept getting better and better. Marty was in the band for 10 years. He was in there from 1990 to 2000, and he was on the following albums: 1990's Rust in Peace, 1992's Countdown to Extinction, 1994's Euthanasia, 1997's Cryptic Writings, and 1999's Risk. Now, all of those albums are pretty solid, with the exception of a couple towards the end. I think Risk was an absolute fail. It is basically what broke up the Marty Friedman-Dave Mustaine relationship, but I don't think it was going to sustain at that point anyway. By 10 years in, Marty Friedman is a very world-class musician, and I think he felt a little too boxed in by playing just metal. And Risk, I think, was Dave's way of trying to appease Marty by writing more modern music, things like that, and incorporating other outside influences. Well, it wasn't really working for Dave, and Dave basically told Marty after this, we need to get back to our roots and do some metal again. And that kind of caused Marty to split. But before he split, he basically solidified Megadeth as one of the greatest thrash metal bands of all time with his playing. To this day, Marty Friedman is still hailed as one of the greatest lead guitar players of all time in metal, and he also has easily one of the top 5 guitar solos in metal with Tornado of Souls, if not other ones as well. Once again, what makes Marty unique is the fact that he is able to play beautiful, fast, melodic phrases, but he has such a unique style and a unique tone, and what makes him unique is his phrasing. Nobody phrases notes like Marty Friedman, or nobody was. Now, obviously, as he's come onto the scene, he's influenced thousands upon thousands of guitar players, but when he first came onto the scene, nobody was really playing like him. He has such a unique and amazing way to phrase melodies and phrase notes and phrase runs that it just added to the identity of Megadeth. His lead playing was just as much an iconic part of that band as Dave Mustaine's riffs, and they really made an amazing duo. To me, those two are up there as some of the greatest lead singer or dual guitar, however you want to do it. You want to look at it as a lead singer guitar duo, or you want to look at it as a tool guitar tandem, doesn't matter to me. Those guys are top tier. Now, if you know anything about Marty Friedman, I could probably talk all day about all the great solos that he had. Once again, Risk was kind of a meh. I struggled kind of to find a really good solo on Risk because I think it kind of took a back seat to the regular format. We're having a bunch of crazy leads and stuff. I did enjoy the lead to The Doctor Is Calling. I don't really care for that song, but the lead is great because it's classic Marty. He's digging into these beautiful notes to kind of shake on the heartstrings. He's doing these beautiful arpeggiated passages, just beautiful classic Marty Friedman stuff, even though the rest of the album was kind of meh. Trust. I really like the album Cryptic Writings. It was kind of a little bit different. It's not the Black Album for Megadeth, but it was weird. Like, Cryptic Writings is an album you can like listen to while you're camping out and stuff. I don't know how to describe it, or like on a road trip. Once again, to me, it's not as good as like Rust in Peace, Countdown, or even Euthanasia maybe, but it still has a lot of great Marty Friedman all over it, especially the song Trust. The whole subject matter of, not trusting somebody, blah. Marty Friedman just comes in with this beautifully dramatic lead that just does what he does. It pulls on the heartstrings, but also leaves you going, wow, that was incredible to listen to. Euthanasia, still a solid album. I really love A Tu Le Monde. That's probably the best solo for me on there. Even on those last couple albums, Marty's still ripping it up, but it's not as intense or not as crazy as some of the solos that he would put on the first albums, like Holy War, Hangar 18, Tornado of Souls, Symphony of Destruction, Foreclosure of a Dream. Basically, those first 2 albums, Rust in Peace and Countdown, pick a solo. They're all absolutely amazing. And for this reason, that's why I pick Marty Friedman as my number 1 guitar player. I just think that his influence on Dave Mustaine's writing, their partnership together, the way they traded off, the chemistry between those guys, while it was good, was unreal. And once again, I think Marty Friedman is the musician that really helped solidify Megadeth from going to a super solid thrash band to elite legends. So after Marty exits the band, everybody's kind of thinking, man, what's going to happen? I think I knew, and most people knew, that Dave Mustaine wasn't going to pick a slouch, but it's like, when you think you've had the best there is, how are you going to follow that up? In 2000, Al Petrelli is picked as the new lead guitar player for Megadeth. He was only in the band, once again, for a couple years, from 2000 to 2002. Now, Al Petrelli is like a top-class session studio gun for hire. He is a consummate professional. What's great about Al is that he is incredibly versed in a lot of different styles of music. That's what made him such a great session player. He's played with Savatage. I think he's played with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He's played with Megadeth. He has been all over the place playing excellent guitar. And he is a great technician on the guitar, but what made him really cool to me is he was able to still make things memorable. There's a difference between shredding through a solo, that's very impressive, but shredding through a solo and then taking the time to stop along the way, smell the roses, hit you in the feels, keep going, weaving the fire with the ice, man, like the melody, the feel, the chops, the technique, and I thought Al Petrelli did a great job. However, once again, kind of a theme for some of these guys, he was only on one album. He was on 2001's The World Needs a Hero. Now, I was discussing this album with Nick before doing this video, and the one thing I noticed is it was kind of a letdown. It really was. From the songwriting perspective, it was a little bit of a letdown, and I think that's just because it followed such a classic lineup, and now things were a little bit different. I know Dave wanted to get back to the ass kicking, but I think as an album, this fell short, but Al Petrelli's leads all over this are fantastic. I honestly think one of the best Megadeth solos, period, comes from Al Petrelli. The Dread and the Fugitive Mind is an absolute masterpiece. It has all the things that you can want in it. It has the fire, it has the feel, beautifully melodically written parts. The title track is actually a great solo, as well as Return to Hangar. Return to Hangar was kind of like the part 2 of Hangar 18. And aside from those, there wasn't really a lot of impressive music on the album, but with the limited availability that Al really had to express himself, I think that he did a phenomenal job. But for that reason, I am going to place this at number 6. Once again, he didn't really get a lot of time with the band, and the album that he played on wasn't strong, although he did leave his mark on the album that he played on with some really killer solos. So after Al Petrelli, Megadeth takes a little bit of a hiatus due to, once again, the Dave Mustaine arm injury, but he does come back and release The System Has Failed in 2004 with Chris Poland once again bringing back at the helm. Chris Poland, of course, does a phenomenal job. He absolutely kills it, but it was just kind of a one-off collaboration. I don't think Chris was really interested in becoming a full-time member again, which had Dave back on the hunt and finally was able to recruit another top tier talent who's played with his own band Eidolon. His brother is Sean Drover, who's been in Megadeth and other bands for a long time. His name is Glenn Drover. Glenn Drover came into the band from 2004 to 2008 and once again released only one album, but there's also a live DVD with him, as there is a couple other, like Al Petrelli has a live DVD as well, Wake Up Dead. However, Glenn Drover was an absolute monster in this band. I thought Glenn Drover was one of the best at playing all the classic solos the way they were written. He is an S-tier shredder, and he can fluidly blaze leads, but what makes Glenn Drover special to me is the fact that throughout the blazing, he has so much control of the instrument that he can stop in the middle of a million-mile-an-hour lead to really hit home some cool little memorable phrases in between. He is great at crafting solos that combine technical wizardry with really cool memorable moments. 2007's United Abominations was kind of like, I think the album was somewhat in relations with the Gears of War video game. He wrote the track Gears of War for that video game, along with some other ones too. But this whole album is awesome. I thought Dave Mustaine was back to kicking ass. I really loved his tone on this. It was really high intense. But to drive home my point as far as Glenn Drover goes, songs like Washington Is Next, the cover of A Tout Le Monde with Christina Scabia, he does a fantastic cover of Marty's solo in that. Never Walk Alone is a fabulous solo. Blessed Are the Dead, You're Dead, all excellent solos from Glenn. Once again, a very limited palette of what we're able to get from Glenn, but man, oh man, did he just fucking take what he was given and just make some memorable ass solos. If you've never watched Glenn Drover, I highly advise, if you're a fan of guitar playing, to go check out some Glenn Drover, and especially those solos like Washington Is Next or Blessed Are the Dead, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about as far as how he's able to be super expressive but at the same time be super lightning fast and impressive as hell. I was lucky enough to see Megadeth many times throughout my life, but I think I saw them the most with Glenn Drover, and he is a consummate professional and he can play damn near anything. Not sure why the chemistry did not last, but it did not last. I'm guessing maybe it has to do with some Mustaine stuff, you know, because when there's a lot of changes and you're the constant variable, you're probably the problem. But I digress. I don't think Dave has really felt like he has had a equal as far as like writing partner and stuff since Marty, until we get to another gentleman later on in this list. But Glenn Drover took what he was given and made a lot of memorable moments with it. Glenn Drover is my number 4 Megadeth guitar player. Even though he has less than some of the other gentlemen, it just sticks with me the most. I love Glenn Drover, and I love Glenn Drover's guitar playing. So, of course, Glenn Drover walks away. Dave Mustaine needs a new lead guitar player. In comes Chris Broadick. Chris Broadick is a shred phenom from the band Jagpanzer. He also spent some time in Nevermore with Jeff Loomis. He's now currently with In Flames. He is a consummate professional, a guitar player's guitar player. He's very skilled at classical compositions. He can play classical guitar like an absolute motherfucker, and he can also melt your face off. He was on 3 albums with Megadeth: 2009's Endgame, 2011's 13, and 2013's Super Collider. I have to be honest with you, I am not the biggest fans of the albums that Chris Broadick was involved in. I easily think that Endgame was the best by far. 13 was kind of just like a rehash of a lot of old Megadeth songs, and Super Collider, to me, the best song on there is the cover of Thin Lizzy's Cold Sweat. With the exception of a couple other songs on Super Collider, for the most part, 13 and Super Collider really just didn't hit it for me. However, Chris Broadick still put amazing leads all over. Once again, Chris Broadick, S-tier, top-tier shredder. I think the guy can literally play anything in the world. I don't think he's limited technically by damn near anything. The only criticism I've ever heard from him with Megadeth fans is that he can be a little cold. And I think what they mean by that is the fact that all the notes are there, all the speed is there, but sometimes it feels like it's lacking melodic parts or hooky things that kind of really pull you into the lead. The flash is there, the speed is there, the burning's all there, but sometimes I feel like, and I guess I agree with them to a certain degree, that there could be more memorable moments in between. I think Glenn Drover is a great example of that. Glenn Drover is shredding amazing too, but he's also putting in really cool licks and phrases in between that add so much more dynamics and feel to the solo. But that's not to say that Chris did not lay down some killer leads while he was in Megadeth. Songs like This Day We Fight, Dialectic Chaos, the intro to that album, 44 Minutes, the song Head Crusher is a shred masterpiece, Sudden Death, How the Story Ends, and Off the Edge. All those are killer leads by Chris Broadick that have just fuel on fire, burning at 100 miles an hour, and it sounds great. However, the one thing that I did notice while listening to these again is I don't really think of too many of those leads, though, that get stuck in my head, or too many of those leads that are like super memorable as a part of the song. Like, for instance, when you think of like Marty, the Marty era of Megadeth, those leads are just as much a part of the song as the riffs and the vocals and everything. And while the leads were great with Chris Broadick, there wasn't a lot of memorable moments in it. It was just a lot of super speed, forward to the floor, let's go. Not a bad thing, but for that reason, that's kind of why I put Chris Broadick at number 5 in the middle of the road. He had a couple more albums than everybody else, and I thought from a technical standpoint, he was phenomenal. It's just, I wish he would have created a little bit more memorable leads, and that probably would have got him a little bit higher on the list. And almost last, but certainly not least, after this boy Chris Broadick decides to leave, I believe him and Shawn Drover leave Megadeth, and they start a band called Act of Defiance. Surprise, surprise, Dave Mustaine did not give a lot of writing creativity or writing freedom to these guys. He's basically saying, this is my band, this is how I want the music to be, and I think Chris and Shawn were looking for a little bit more creative input, and that caused them to dip. However, Dave Mustaine, always knowing how to pick a great lead guitar player, stumbles on a fusion shred phenom from, I think Brazil is where he's from, Kiko Loro. And Kiko comes from the band Angra, which was like a kind of a power metal instrumental. I'm not as familiar. I did Google them a little bit, YouTube them a little bit when I learned that he was going to be in the band. And the first thing I noticed is, wow, this guy's phenomenal. And not only is he phenomenal, he reminded me a lot of Chris Poland. And what I mean by that is he doesn't come from that typical shred background. While he was still top tier, once again, Kiko has amazing technique, limitless probably on the guitar as far as technique and execution and stuff goes. And what I mean by that is he comes from more of a fusion jazz kind of a background, progressive kind of a background, as opposed to the, heavy metal rock blues based stuff. And that added a brand new kind of element and flair that Megadeth hadn't seen in a while. And I think for the first time, maybe since Marty, a guitar player has come into Megadeth and impressed Dave Mustaine so much that he opens up to him and allows him creative input. And rightfully so. Kiko was only in the band from 2015 to 2023, and he was only on 2 albums, Dystopia, The Sick, The Dying, and The Dead. And both of those albums are awesome. I remember when Dystopia first came out and it had Chris Adler from Lamb of God, left Lamb of God and was drumming on this album. And they did some really cool music videos. But the first thing I noticed right away in the song Dystopia is there's like 3 leads in that song and Kiko destroys them all. He has a intensity and a prowess that is not only fast but intense. Sometimes guys can play really fast, but there's not a lot of feel or intensity behind it. Kiko is a very expressive yet technical player as well. And once again, Dave Mustaine doesn't pick any slouches. But the other thing that was really important about choosing Kiko to me is I think that Kiko helped push through the third coming of Megadeth, so to speak. You had the original on the scene with Chris Poland, then you had the golden years with Marty. Then they kind of just, Dave was doing his thing here and there, hitting and missing. But when Kiko came back into the band and some new lifeblood was allowed to inject itself into the songwriting process with Kiko there, I really noticed a difference. And I absolutely love the last album, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. There is a song called We'll Be Back. And I remember hearing that for the first time and going, oh my God, this is one of the coolest Megadeth songs I've heard in a long, long time. I absolutely love it. Kiko brought in a new creative force as well. And songs like The Threat Is Real, amazing solo. Dystopia, incredible leads, 3 of them. Poisonous Shadows has a very beautiful technical lead in it. Conquer or Die is a great track off of Dystopia. It's like an instrumental, a Kiko instrumental, and he fucking tears it up. The song Will Be Back. Also songs like Night Stalker, Sacrifice, Soldier On. Even though he was in the band for 8 years or so, give or take, I think he left his mark and once again helped revitalize Megadeth. I feel like Megadeth now is back on this path of writing really good music, and Kiko is a huge reason why. Kiko injected new blood into Dave, and it helped his writing. His writing got more exciting, and also there was new things, influences coming in from other people to do the writing, which kept it more interesting. And for that reason, I think Kiko is the number 3 guitar player in Megadeth. And the reason I picked those top 3 guys is in Marty, Chris, and Kiko is all 3 times those guys are in the band, it's like a revolution or an upgrade of the band. Those guys each brought the band to a different level with their playing. Now, that's not to say that the other guys aren't phenomenal players as well. They absolutely are. Nobody on this list is a slouch. Nobody at all. You cannot suck and play with Dave Mustaine. You just can't. It doesn't happen. But those guys had such a unique impression and such a good chemistry with Dave Mustaine that the writing was just incredible with them, on top of creating some incredibly memorable leads to go along with the incredibly memorable tracks. So that's my list. Now, once again, I left the new guy Timu out. I don't know what he's going to be like. All I've ever seen him do is playing other people's solos. He does a good job of it, but I can't really use that as enough to base him as a guitar player because I need to see what he brings to the table. So maybe later on I'll do an updated version and just kind of inject him in. But so far, that's kind of how I feel when it comes to the Megadeth lead guitar players. I would absolutely love if you guys had a solo that I didn't think of from a certain player, or if you guys have your own lists, your own reasons, please feel free to comment. Once again, this is just my opinion. So please share with us. Let's open up some discussion, see how you guys feel. Megadeth has always been one of my favorite bands. Dave Mustaine is easily one of my biggest influences as far as a writer. I've always loved his riffs. They say don't meet your heroes, but I would absolutely meet him now. I wouldn't want to meet him back in the day. He'd probably punch me out or something, but now I'm sure he's all mellowed out and would have a glass of wine with me and have a really great conversation, man. But I digress. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We have merchandise available at our website, thrallsofmetal.com. We also have this little button down below where you can subscribe to our channel for 99 cents and be a part of our exclusive community. Our perk at the moment is to do monthly discussions with us about anything you want, be it what color is Jammin' John's asshole to who has more of a mushroom tip, me or Necrotic. I don't know, but we can discuss these things. We'll discuss whatever the hell you want. And last but certainly not least, thank you. Thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your day to hang out with me, talk some things that we all love. Without you guys, none of this is possible, and we look forward to bringing you new stuff like this in the future as well. I know I started with Megadeth. If there's other bands as well, like if you can think of other bands that had a lot of member changes, doesn't even have to be guitar players. If they went through a lot of drummers, whatever, I would love to hear that because we could dive into something like that. I'm going to continue the theme of guitar players with some other bands and stuff too, but any kind of suggestions or anything, please feel free to drop it in the comments. I would love to read them and use that as a base so that way we're giving you guys what you want. So with that, I am Shredlord, I am out, and you guys keep it real.